welcome along to another episode of the Saints FC podcast, hosted on the Ugly Insides YouTube channel. Now this week, John has bagged himself another candid interview with another ex-Southampton player and currently still plying his trade across the pond in Orange County, California, in the United States of America. Guess who it is yet? It's Richard Chaplow. He joins us this week and recalls his two spells at Southampton. Firstly, in the Championship as Saints were sinking towards their lowest ebb, and then joining Saints once again in League One before the double promotion to the Premier League. Richard also still loves the city of Southampton and is still friends with many other players he played alongside in those seasons, but also recalls how a personal tragedy encouraged him to move his family to the USA. He also tells us about his plans for the future and his hopes to get into coaching with his experience from two recent Saints bosses of Nigel Adkins and Mauricio Pochettino. So over to John and Richard this week for the Saints FC podcast.
Here's Sims. It's a good search this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it! Just a minute to play. Plus stoppage time. Here's Letizia! Oh, better to say farewell than one of the brightest players ever to wear the red and white.
Hello and welcome to the Saints FC podcast. This week we get the chance to meet up with Richard Chaplow and have a good old long chat about his Saints career and a few other things. It's quite a long episode, this one, but definitely worth staying in for the duration and having a listen to the whole interview. We go through everything from his Saints career, from his first spell at Southampton back in the Championship, and then his second spell at Southampton when he came back at the time that we were down in League One, and then stayed with Southampton all the way through the couple of promotions and up into the Premier League. We also get onto his time at Millwall and his time now playing for Orange County Soccer Club in California in the USA. And we talk about the kind of personal tragedy that Richard went through, which kind of led to him leaving the United Kingdom and heading across to the United States. There's some real highs and a few little lows in this interview, bit of a roller coaster, and we'd absolutely love to thank Richard for giving us his time and for really kind of bearing all in this interview. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy it, and let's head over and listen to Richard now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Saints FC podcast. I am absolutely delighted to have a bit of an ex-Saints legend, certainly cult hero, if not quite legendary status, on the line, all the way from Orange County in the United States of America, Mr. Richard Chaplow. How are you? Good evening, or good afternoon, I suppose, to you over there.
Yeah, it's just gone 1 o'clock, so... How you doing over there back in the UK? It's a pleasure to be on the show. Yeah,
I've got to say the weather is probably not as nice as it is over on the west coast of the United States of America.
No.
It's pouring with rain here. Yeah, but I imagine it's gloriously sunny in California, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Yeah, woke up to a little bit of cloud cover this morning, but as always, like clockwork, it clears away. Normally by about 10 a.m, which is when we're just starting to get the boots on and get out on the field. So heats up pretty quickly, and the rest of the day is positively tropical from there on out. So it's definitely a plus. Not that I don't love my homeland, but the weather and the climate it allows you to do so much more with your time. So welcomed in that respect.
Brilliant. Right, I'm just going to give a little bit of a run through of your Southampton career for our listeners that perhaps they're younger than I am, they don't remember going to see you, or perhaps they live abroad and didn't get a chance to see you when you played for us in the Championship in League One.
Yep.
So for the Saints fans that don't know you, your first spell with Saints was 2005-2006 season when you came on loan from West Bromwich Albion, and I think you had about 11 appearances in that time. Yep. Quite a tumultuous time with Saints, but we'll get onto that in a bit. And then after about, I don't know, it was about 4 years or so, you came back to Saints in 2010 after we'd gone down to League One, but just started at the very start, I suppose at the very beginning of the journey of the kind of double promotion back up to the Premier League under Nigel Adkins. And, you were kind of a pretty big presence in the first team. I think you played most games in both those seasons as we went up from League One and then up from the Championship and got into the Premier League.
I was at West Brom and originally, like you said, came down on loan for the back end of your champion season from when West Brom were in the Premiership. I think Nigel Quasi was coming to West Brom and I was part of the deal that came the other way. I actually found out I was going out on loan as I was tucking into my cereal at the West Brom training ground. I was sat across from Jonathan Green and Paul Robinson at the time, and we were watching Sky Sports News. And across the bottom of the page, it said that I was going to Southampton on loan. So the lads were like, "Chaps, you off, mate?" And I was like, "Don't think so." And they pointed to the TV, and there it was running across the bottom. So I went and knocked on Brian Robson's door, and he informed me that he just agreed to send me down to Southampton. So little did I know at the time it was going to be my first taster at a club that's been very close to my heart now, and obviously a very successful time. But came in there under George Burley to try and help secure a championship berth for the season after. And loved my time down there. It was brilliant, which was basically the main reason and the catalyst for me agreeing to come back when unfortunately the club had gone down to League One. So that was the start of it all, and thankful that it happened, because if it hadn't, I probably wouldn't have said yes to a League One team at that point in my career. But I did, and as they say, the rest is history, or as someone said, a bit of a fairy tale. So it was brilliant to be involved in.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get back to you on that. But first of all, let's talk about this kind of first spell you had with the Saints in the Championship. So George Burley was the manager. He was brought in after Harry Redknapp left Saints. But it was quite an odd time for Southampton. So, I mean, they'd been in the Premier League or the top flight for 27 years at this point, gone down to the Championship. And it was during the weird experiment with Sir Clive Woodward being on the back staff, the back team staff of Saints. And I find that really bizarre. I mean, what sort of atmosphere did it feel like going into the club? Did it feel like things weren't quite right, or did you not really notice that being kind of a young player going in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously coming in at that age, I think I was just coming up to 21. I think that was where I was up, because I remember signing, and one of the conditions I said to George Burley was, can I go back for my 21st birthday that I had booked in, and he obviously agreed to do that. But I think walking through the door and coming into such a big club, it was easily on par with West Brom and their setup, if not better, to be honest. Which, obviously West Brom at that point were a yo-yo team, and my previous team before that, being Burnley, was way off in terms of facilities of that time. So walking through the door, there was definitely a sense of, this is a much, much bigger club than a championship team. And there was obviously boys in the team and lads in the team that had played top flight football for a long time. But like you said, there was a little bit of an air in there of not a club in crisis, but something wasn't quite, ticking along as it should be. I mean, they were in the Championship, and not only in the Championship, but struggling towards the bottom at the time I walked in. So, I think George recruited myself. Jermaine Wright, I think, came in from maybe someone he'd had at Ipswich. Darren Potter came in on loan from Liverpool. And they were a fantastic group of guys, Klaus Lundetman, Danny Higginbottom, them sort of boys. And we actually had a really good team, but it was just, for some reason, they were down there. But thankfully, in that particular season, we managed to start playing really good football. I believe from the articles and the fans at the time were impressed with the fast turnaround, and we started playing teams off the park. And I think we pretty much secured our safety with maybe 3 games remaining. I think it was Brighton away at the Withdean. I think it was. I think I scored in that game. 1-0, I think it may have been, and which ultimately sent them down as well, I believe. But it was it was a bit of a strange atmosphere, but not in respect to what was going on in the change rooms, because they were a fantastic bunch.
Yeah, and actually, you finished that season so strongly. I remember that we were all quite optimistic for the season that was going to follow, and I think people started thinking, well, we potentially we could be getting promoted the next season, and we got to the playoffs. But I mean, I've got to admit, I was very surprised that you didn't sign for us permanently after that loan spell at the end of that season, because you just seemed to fit into the team really, really well. Why was it that it didn't get made permanent, or do you know what happened?
I obviously went back to West Brom, who I don't know if we got relegated that season. I can't remember. But I went back and I spoke to Brian Robson, and I believe that George tabled a bid for me of $1 million or so, and I was quite open to the idea of actually coming down. I loved the area. I thought that, like I said, the area and the group of lads in there were a good group, and obviously I felt that the team was going to push on and progress, which they momentarily did. But I think Brian Robson wanted to keep me around. Obviously, I came in and played well at Southampton. I hadn't been given many opportunities at that point at West Brom after I joined from Burnley, because we were always in a relegation scrap fight in the Premiership, and he didn't feel his answer to that was to play the more experienced pros that had been through the mill and were maybe a little bit more of a stronger and more steely mentality than a 21-year-old guy still trying to understand and progress in the game. So I was open to the idea of coming down, but it was ultimately Brian Robson that said that he wanted me to stay, and he liked again what he'd seen while I was down at Southampton, and said that I was a big part of West Brom moving forward. So I stayed at West Brom, and I didn't really get any more games under Brian until he left and Tony Mowbray came in. So it worked out okay in the end, because I got to come back. But it could have been sooner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as much as I like talking about West Brom, I'm going to bring the subject back to the Saints at this point.
Yeah.
So in that first spell, it was quite an interesting squad. So you mentioned quite a lot of the experienced players that come down, a few of the players that have been there on loan, but there were also some pretty exciting talents in that Championship side as well. Like, you got a chance to play alongside Gareth Bale and Theo Walcott. They were just kind of breaking into the squad. Do you remember those kids coming through and starting to train with the first team and starting to get some game time? Or
I remember Gareth very, very well, because Gareth had started to be introduced to the squad at the back end of the season that I joined on loan. He'd obviously been promoted through the ranks, and obviously now rightly so. But he would play him at fullback behind me in training, because George used to actually play me out on the wing, or in the wing, right mid or left mid, and I used to come in narrow and tuck in next to Jermaine and Darren. He used to play in there as well. And it worked well, but obviously throughout in training, I had Gareth directly behind me in some practice games. So that was the first time I was introduced to him and came across him. And obviously he had quality, but it wasn't really until I left and that season following the playoff season for you guys that Gareth became a regular starter in the team. The guys that were in the team with me at the time were Dexter Blackstock, Nathan Dyer, McGoldrick, them boys. So still talented guys that have gone on to have very, very good careers. But yeah, just not to the ilk of a Gareth Bale or a Theo Walcott. And I think also that Adam was in the group socially, but he wasn't quite training with us at that point.
Yeah. So what we'll do now is I think we'll fast forward a few years, and in 2010, you've got Saints who are in League One. They've just sacked their manager, Alan Pardew. They have had a really, really slow start to the season. Yet you felt compelled to go back to the Saints. And I think at the start of that season, things were looking pretty poor, weren't they, for the first couple of months? Which is when you signed. So I wonder what that motivation was that made you think, actually, I will take a risk and drop down another division.
Yeah, well, initially it wasn't much of a risk because I came on loan, so I could always jump ship if things did go south. But ultimately, I wouldn't. At that point in my career, I'd obviously gone to West Brom from Burnley for 1.5, and then 1.5 million, which in them days was a lot of money. And then I was sold from West Brom to Preston for just under 1.5 again. So again, a lot of money. And I felt that I was in a point in my career where I needed to be playing top end Championship to try and get back into the Premiership. But at this moment in time, I'd just fallen out with Darren Ferguson. At Preston, we had a difference of opinion, which can happen in football. And he didn't want me around the squad. I didn't want to be there. And Saints came knocking. Well, actually, Nigel came knocking and wanted to bring me down for originally just a month, see how we got on. But like I said, without the previous experience and knowing about the area, the club, the fans, everything about Southampton, I probably would have turned a blind eye to just because they were League One and struggling a little bit. But I knew that if I came down and things went well, that it could be amazing. And I was willing to take the risk based on previous experiences. So to come down for a month, it quickly got extended, I think. And then obviously I signed permanently after that was up.
I've got to admit, I think everyone was delighted when you came back, because that spell we had with the Championship, I think you played really, really well. And actually, because of your bald head, I think you reminded quite a few of us of a former Saints legend, as someone who we all think fondly of, which is Chris Marsden. I hope you don't mind saying that. I think his baldness was to do with maybe the early onset of old age, whereas I think yours is alopecia, isn't it? But, despite that, the way you guys played on the pitch, it kind of brought kind of back good memories, and obviously you playing really well meant that we were so delighted when you came back for Saints. What did you know much about Nigel Adkins before you spoke to him as the Saints manager? Because for us it seemed quite bizarre to be getting rid of Alan Pardew and be bringing in a guy who'd kind of come up through the ranks being a physio, and he had done quite well in his previous job and won promotion, but it did seem quite strange.
No, it's I'll be honest, it wasn't really at the time, it wasn't Nigel that obviously brought me, that was the driver for me to come back. It was more the fact of everything the club brought, and I knew what the club was about. I knew very little of Nigel, I'll be honest. I knew he'd been successful at Scunthorpe and achieved promotions with their teams. He spoke well to me on the phone, which is always a positive. But it was basically everything about Southampton Football Club that brought me back, and not particularly the opportunity, which can obviously sometimes be a driver for players to work with a certain manager. I knew very little and had never really crossed paths with him previously. So, like I said, there wasn't much risk because it was originally for a month. So it was on both parties to figure out, would it work, would it not? But obviously came in, loved it. Nigel worked well. I enjoyed his leadership and his coaching. Results started picking up pretty much immediately since I joined. And
I was wondering if you were going to claim that turn of fortune for Southampton,
of course.
That being the turning point of the season. I think when you came in, we were probably 17th in the division, and then obviously at the end of the season we finished second. Maybe you could make an argument there for cause and effect. Certainly, it seemed like it had a positive effect on the team. And how did Nigel get you guys motivated when you were down in that lower parts of League One? Did the players still believe, it's just a matter of time before we start picking up the results? And were you still focused on promotion at that point as well?
I think in any football club, in any football team, there's always an element of confidence that is needed to perform to maximums. And without doubt, things had started slowly under Alan Pardew. Coming in, I think it was just a case of, trying to get a couple of wins under our belts. And I mean, the squad quality that was there for everyone to see, without doubt, there's no arguing that squad was littered with talent. And it was just a case of trying to get it into a formation and into a place that it was going to perform week in, week out. And for me, it was literally just a case of, let's get a couple of wins on the board, let's get some points going, and we know that we're good enough to put a string of wins together and climb out of where we are right now. And let's see where it takes us. But the more the momentum built, the better we got, and the more we steamrolled teams. And it literally got to the point where we knew not just turn up and we'd win, but we were so confident going into games that, we'd already won in our heads. So when you're feeling that way, you're feeling almost bulletproof on the pitch. So couldn't wait for the next one to come around. And we were just, knocking goals in for fun. We had a strong defence in Fonte, Davis and Radi Jahidi at the time, and everyone was chipping in and everyone pulled their own weight, and we had an amazing team spirit, and it literally just took off. There wasn't much needed to be adjusted from game to game. It was just a case of going out there and playing to our highest standards, and we knew that would be enough.
So, let's talk about that squad, because at the time, you can see the squad is strong. You can see some of the players have got real talents. But, if we go through like a bit of a roll call of some of the kind of big players in that squad, some of them have gone on to become regular internationals. They're playing in the Champions League. And yet these guys were there playing in League One, going to all sorts of places across the country, Dagenham and Redbridge, Colchester. I think I remember going to the Colchester United game and you couldn't even see the other side of the pitch. It was so foggy, which is it's just bizarre when you think that, this was a team that contained Morgan Schneiderlin, who's now French international, Jose Font, who's won the European Championships, Ricky Lambert, who obviously went on to play for England as well. Even had like Jason Puncheon, although he didn't perform perhaps as well at League One as he does in the Premier League. You would have Adam Lallana as well, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Some really, really fantastic players. And you were part of a midfield which, when you think of the guys that were playing alongside you, they've all gone on to be established internationals and play at that highest level. Did you know you were part of something really special when you were in it? Or
yeah, I think without doubt, it was been. It's easy for me to say it's been the most enjoyable and successful part of my career, being part of that team, that changing room. It was great to be in and around, and fantastic to look back at. But when you're in there, and I'd played in the Premier League already by the time I come and played against some pretty formidable characters. But the one player that I thought, wow, this guy's special was actually Adam Lallana. If we had lost him at any point in League One, he was the one person I think that could have affected us not achieving promotion. Everyone, Alex was taking a lot of the headlines, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think maybe because of his age and the interest from Arsenal, but I know that Southampton were fighting incredibly hard to keep hold of Adam, namely from Alan, I think, was trying to take him away. I think he might have been at Newcastle at this point, and it was Adam that really made us tick, and the things that he did daily in training are obviously all the things that we are now seeing daily in the Premier League and for England. So the squad was without doubt talented, and looking around that changing room, you knew you were not only with talented individuals, but also with good characters that cared for each other, would go that extra mile for each other. The bond was very, very strong, and it was something that was probably built from the proximity that we all lived from each other, with obviously Southampton being all the way down on the south coast. There's not really many areas around that you can go and live in and have to commute in. So literally 90% of the squad lived within a few miles of each other. So we spent all our time together off the pitch as well as on the pitch, involving the wife, the kids, and everything. And it was just such a strong bond and family atmosphere that we really were sort of like a band of brothers, if you will. And that, added with the talent, it's a recipe for success without doubt.
Yeah, and that run at the end of the season, I think from March through to the end of May, you won 13 out of the last 15 league games, and we just rocketed up to towards the top of the table, finished in second. Had the season gone on any longer, no doubt we would have won the league as well. I think one of the moments that lots of people remember the most is probably that kind of Jose Font header during in the last moments of the game against Brighton, who were the kind of the title winners in the end. Really, really fantastic time. So, I mean, you've mentioned that you and the players used to hang out. So after a game like that, where you've beaten Brighton, it's looking pretty good for promotion. Where did you guys used to hang out in Southampton? Would you go around to each other's houses, or were you kind of heading down into the town, or what happened? Let's get some tips. A little
bit of everything, really. Obviously, when you're have away games, it's difficult. You're getting back late, and you just jump in your cars and go home. And then you would, sometimes meet up on a Sunday, whether it be at Kel's house for a barbecue or down in the marina for a few beers if it were a lad's day out. I think the main haunt on a Saturday night was 90s, the nightclub in Southampton. So it was good times. There was never, the fans were brilliant. Everyone around the area was a Southampton fan, and we'd go out, we wouldn't get any trouble. We'd stay out of trouble as well, and as best we could. And it was a real sort of party carnival atmosphere on nights out. We were, like I said, steamrolling teams, coming back week in, week out with 3 points. And when the time permitted for us to enjoy and go out and spend time together, we would do so. If we had a Saturday game, for example, if you were playing midweek, then drinking is pretty much off the agenda. We mixed it up. So literally really was a fantastic time. We made some very, very good friends, and it's no surprise that it was so successful, because to have that team bond and team spirit is what actually does give you that extra bit of edge over the people. So
it's funny because a lot of the Leicester City players mention that, don't they, of their title winning side, how they used to spend time together and know each other as friends, and that kind of bond of being together for a lot. And I guess you see it on the pitch in the way the team plays, but you perhaps don't know all the kind of nuances around it. And when you see a team that's stuttering, I don't know whether they're all hanging out as well, or what's going on with that. I think, for the sake of time, let's move on to the season in the Championship, because you guys just kept up that form from the end of the previous season. And I don't know what the plans were at the start of the season going into the Championship, but you guys were top of the table after 2 or 3 games, and and you didn't really end up relinquishing first or second place for the whole season.
Mm-hmm. Easy game, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think I don't think anyone was really expecting us to go and steamroll the championship. It wasn't a surprise because once we were in it, we knew, and we started playing these teams. We thought, yeah, we're better than we think we are. Like, we didn't quite realise probably just how strong we were. And again, there's that snowball effect. We won the first game at St Mary's against Leeds. Obviously, you're always going to get a tough game against Leeds. They come in and they're hard to play against, and been in the league for so long. Obviously, a massive club in their own right, and I think Dean Hammond scored an absolute screamer with his left foot, and it was the start of great things to come. You just take one game at a time. I don't think you even really look at that point of the season ahead. You just wanting to get. I mean, they come fast because you have Saturday, Tuesday, then a cup game's normally thrown in there early days in the season, and we knew we had a good squad again. Obviously, we'd added slightly to it, and yeah, we just kept going, and we didn't look back. And then all of a sudden, coming up to Christmas, and you find yourselves in the top two, and it's that's the moment that you think, right, okay, we can actually go on and do this. I think there was Brighton were obviously a strong team again that year. They managed to keep things going a little bit, and West Ham we were battling it out with. But I think it was a game against Brighton where I think we might have gone originally down. I can't remember, but we absolutely battered them in the end, and we won. And we walked off that pitch after, and I thought, yeah, we can get promoted here.
Yeah, I think there's two, and I wonder if you guys have this as a regret or not as well, but I have two regrets from this season from the fans' perspective, from being nearly the perfect season. The first one, and probably actually the least important of the 2 points, was that having spent most of the season on top of the table, that we just kind of faltered at the end and didn't win the title. It would have been really great to have done that. But obviously, like, getting promoted to the Premier League was obviously number one objective. And the other thing was we're facing Portsmouth 2 times in that season, whilst we were on this brilliant upwards trajectory and they were free falling at the time. We should have absolutely killed them, and we drew with them both times. And I just can't understand why you guys didn't just hammer them.
Well, I'd say on the Portsmouth games, definitely on the away game, I was injured, so you can't blame me for that one.
Yeah.
But I know for the fans it's such a big thing, and the players really buy into it as well. The rivalry, and I think. From my experience at Southampton, I've always had a really, really close relationship with the fans. And whenever I stepped out onto the pitch, it was always to try and entertain the fans as best as possible because of the connection that I had with everyone. So I always gave, literally everything I had for you guys in the stands. And I know that going into the game, the lads were desperate to beat them. And yeah, I think it was a Norris volley at home from distance that beat Kelvin. So I think I was injured for that one as well. And I remember being really disappointed that we couldn't get the win over them that day. And then looking back at the away game, it was a very weak goal on our behalf. I think Gooley managed to show his Brazilian side a little bit and probably didn't quite stick his head in where it hurts, which is part and parcel of things. It happens, and but maybe if we'd had a bit more of a defender in that position, he might have stuck his head in there instead of the attacker mentality of not always going in there where it hurts. So disappointed without doubt. So share that disappointment with you, and to not win, to not actually be outright winners was a massive blow because we felt we were the best team in the league. I think it was always between ourselves and pretty much West Ham throughout, and I still have a large dislike for West Ham even now when I watch it on TV because of the rivalry that we had in that season. It was actually Reading, that came from nowhere with and probably did what we did the season before, where they just strung together win after win after win. And listen, we played Reading and we knew that we were a better team than them, but yet they came to our place and they did a number on us, without doubt. And once they beat us at home, I think we conceded from a cross after about 20-25 minutes. Jason Roberts at the back stick nodded one in, and it was after that game that I think we had like 70% possession, 15, 16 shots, and I think we definitely lost the game. I can't remember the final score, but the winner of that game would have won the league. We knew that going into the game, and unfortunately we just didn't manage to turn up on that occasion. And it would have been nice to have a winners medal without doubt, but to get back-to-back promotions was equally as amazing.
And after you guys just roll Coventry over 4-0 on the last day of the season, which was a glorious way of finishing the season. 2 seasons in a row you've had the fans flood onto the pitch. What happens when the fans flood on? Are you thinking, oh crap, I've got to get out of here, or did you just embrace them and go with it?
I'm thinking crowd surf. Let's have a go on the crowd surfing. It looks fun. Yeah, let's party together and suck it up and have some memories. So without doubt, let them come, and hugs all around, and like you say, you're getting put up on shoulders and whatnot. It was amazing to see, and then we obviously all went up and got presented with the trophies or the medals at the time, and we all had a sing out on the pitch, and the players were leading the chants, and I can remember that like it was yesterday. It was brilliant singing all them songs with the fans. And it just for me epitomised the relationship and everything that we had with the fans, which what made us, not only were we strong in the changing rooms and around the training ground, but obviously we had that backing from everyone in the stands, and it really was a tough place for people to come and play because we were formidable, and we had support from all four corners. So it was fantastic and amazing times to look back on. Like I say, I can remember them like they were yesterday. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with doing an interview over the phone, is that you can't see the fact that like my face has just got the biggest grin on it as I'm thinking
as well.
Of that day. It was so good. I mean, that side was brilliant as well. I think Ricky Lambert got over 30 goals that season, but we had goals from all over the place, didn't we? I think you probably bagged like 4 or 5 goals. Lallana had more than 10. Jos Højveld, of all people, got I think 8 goals. Which...
all on Tuesday nights as well. Love to score on a Tuesday night, did Jos? No, we had goals from all areas of the pitch. We had we had Adam chipping. I think he got quite a few more than 10. I don't know why, but I want to say nearly reaching 20. But and obviously we had Ricky, who has dynamite in his boots and a stick on his head as well, so he can score from anywhere, the guy. And we knew that if we provided him with enough opportunities in a game, more often we only needed one anyway, but he was going to find the back of the net, and then add in and around that Goulet, probably maybe got double figures, myself getting 5 or 6, Adam, Jos, Jose even getting Fonte getting a few, and we had goals coming in from all angles, and we had good service from wide in Danny Fox and Fraser Richardson or Danny Butterfield, providing deep and accurate crosses. And you knew if Ricky wasn't going to score, he was going to set you up. So it was a dream for people like myself and Adam, who preyed on knockdown second ball runs into the box. Made it so easy to play with because you knew if it was anywhere in and around Ricky, he was getting hold of it. As simple as that. So you could run forward, knowing that he's not going to lose the ball, and you're not going to have to run back. So it makes things obviously a hell of a lot easier having that confidence. But yeah, goals were going in left, right, and centre, and not only that, we had equally as impressive displays. I don't know if you went to the Leeds away game, but that was literally like the Alamo at Allen Road, and we managed to chuck our bodies on the line. And I was watching a clip probably about a month ago now. Sometimes Saints put up the things on Twitter, and on this day in whenever, and he put up the Leeds game, and it was funny watching that back. Like Kelvin pulling off some ridiculous saves, and guys just rolling on the floor in the 18-yard box and blocking things with their heads and the shoulders and the knees and all sorts. So it really showed that, you know, that strength of mind and presence that we had as a team, that we were willing to go that extra inch for each other, and tight at the back and formidable up front, and it obviously got us back to where we all wanted to be. So amazing, absolutely amazing. And like you said, I'm sat here with a big grin on my face as well, just talking about it. It's very, very nice to relive.
To be honest, I've got to say, probably been the most fun 2 years I've experienced as a Saints fan now. Like, obviously there's been some really, really fantastic times, like getting into Europe recently was brilliant. The seasons under Koeman, but it was great because there were loads of grounds that you'd never been to, loads of clubs that you'd not seen Saints play before, and you know that team was just a fantastic team. And you know, when you look back on it now, you think, God, if that team stayed together, who knows, you know, if what they could have gone on to. Well, I was chatting to Tom, who I present the show with occasionally. We were talking about this team and interesting signings. I remember we brought in Billy Sharp halfway through the season, just to kind of get those extra 10 goals that it was going to take to get us over the line. Do you think he felt a little bit like he'd been brought in as a bit of a mercenary just to finish the job? Or, you know, what was it like when someone like that comes in to this dynamic and this team which is already clicking together and playing really well together?
We're good, Bill. It's okay. You don't need to come. No, Billy came in, and one thing Billy is a character and a goal scorer at the same time. So he fitted straight into the team changing room, the work ethic and the banter that we all had. He's a bit of a joker himself, and you know, a happy-go-lucky sort of guy. So there was no issues on that front, and you know, we welcomed his goal scoring abilities, because we knew that he would get some important goals for us that could help get us over the line, which he did on a few occasions when given the nod to start. I think he originally struggled to find his feet and get into the team. Like you said, we were already motoring and clicking, and everyone knew the roles, and it's difficult to come in. And I think he was aware that, you know, he'd have to bide his time a little bit. But talking of signings, we also signed Tananori Lee from obviously the Japanese international, and I think he originally got the nod in front of Bill when there was an opening. I think that Nigel liked the dynamic part of his game, where he could potentially run in behind, where with Ricky up top we didn't have his lightning pace, so to speak. So Billy had to sit there for quite a while and wait for his time. But when he came and when he got the chances, he took them away like he had done all his career, and obviously like he's doing right now at Sheffield United, and scored some really important goals for us. The ones that are sticking out are obviously the away game at Peterborough. I think I set him up for his first, and again they were another team that were hunting down, and I had, so to speak, a rivalry with Darren Phil, so it's always nice to get one over Peterborough in my eyes. So I was welcome for Billy to get them goals.
So let's kind of move into the Premier League season now, which it was kind of a bit of I suppose a double-edged sword for you, really. It was all I don't know whether a silver lining with a cloud, or I don't know what the right kind of phrase is, but it was strange because having been such a big part of both those seasons getting promoted, it just didn't work out when we got up to the Premier League.
Like you said, I played a big part in seasons in the previous seasons, and played the majority of the games, and pretty much was always a starter when fit enough to do so. And then we got into the Premier League, and everyone's delighted, and we signed a few players, obviously trying to add quality and depth to the squad, which is needed. But for whatever reason, I don't know, Nigel didn't really just give me any chances. Far and few between. Nothing had changed in regards to how things were going in training or anything like that. He just named his team, and more often than not, I was on the bench. So I wasn't getting on either. So frustrating, because I felt that, all right, back in the Premier League now, where I want to be. Let's get this show on the road, and let's see where we can go. And to not be given the opportunity to do so was disappointing. But it's a career that's full of ups and downs and disappointments and great times. And although I didn't get the minutes or the opportunities that I would have liked, I still wouldn't have changed anything, because I now turn around and look, and obviously Southampton are firmly cemented now in the Premier League. So I had a big part to play in that, and I look fondly back on them memories and them opportunities. But I feel that if I had been given time, been the same old player that I was in the Championship, and played in the style and in a dynamic that would have suited us as a team. But for example, he went down the route of Jason Punchin, who had not really been involved in the team for 18 months, had an impressive pre-season, and before you know it, he's playing Jason in front of me. And Jason's by no means a bad player. He's obviously gone out on to have a great career in the Premiership and show his quality on a weekly basis. But I felt a little bit hard done by, because I felt I contributed so much, and players such as Jason hadn't so much done so in the previous season. But yet here we were, and he was playing and I wasn't. So
I do feel your pain on that one, because I just remember with Jason, he was always an enigma for me, because as soon as the television studio were in town, if the Saints games were televised, you'd see Jason put in like a brilliant performance. Or if we were playing against a big team, or maybe one of the teams from the higher divisions in the cup, that's when you'd see the good Jason punching. But week in, week out, he just wasn't there, was he? It does seem bizarre, and no doubt as soon as he got back to the Premier League, he felt it was worth his while again. But I mean, that may be a harsh view that I'm taking as a
I think,
but that's what it felt like as a fan.
Yeah, I think obviously Jason's an extremely talented character, and for whatever reason he didn't perform in the lower leagues, where it's a little bit more of a stealing mentality, if you will, and you have to grind out certain scenarios. But he did. He came into his own in he had a fantastic pre-season. I can't deny him that. But I just felt that Nigel could have been a little bit more loyal to some of the players that had done so much for him to get him there. And obviously we didn't have a fantastic start, so to speak. And unfortunately for Nigel, he was asked to pack his bags, and in came Mauricio, so which was a fantastic find by the club. Credit to them. And yet again, they produced a diamond out of the rough.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny of you talking about loyalty there, because it was. I just remember speaking to family members and friends about Saints when we'd sacked Nigel Adkins, and it just felt kind of really quite wrong in terms of what he'd done. To get double promotion and then to be sacked. I mean, what was the feeling in the club at the time? Were you guys surprised when he got moved on, or did you see it coming?
I think it was a mixed emotions. I think we felt that we were extremely appreciative for everything he'd done previously and to where we got to as a group. But I think it was also evident to see that we were at a point in the season where we were struggling to come up with answers to winning games, and the club obviously felt it was time to try and bring in someone that may have a little bit more of an elite level insight into respect to getting us Premiership survival. And I think history shows that it was the right move. it's a difficult one because yes, he did so much for the club, as did the players, to get us where we were. But whichever way you want to look at it, football's a business, and it always will be. And there will be business decisions that are made, not friendship decisions. So it's a cutthroat business, as I found out when I got there.
Yeah.
And obviously, and as Nigel found out when he was eventually given the boot. So I fully understand that you feel like you have a connection with people, but you look at Leicester, they did it, and again they survived. So the proof is in the pudding, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you get much chance with Pochettino?
Under Mauricio, he was unbelievable as a coach. Straight away he came in, and I loved training under him because he really pushed you to the limits. But again, at this point I was kind of stuck in a little bit of a rut. I'd had no game time when he rolled through the door. I also feel that the club that it is, Southampton being the club it is now, and the way that we like to push our youth through, that if there's an opportunity to have a youngster on the bench that would offer similar aspects or outcome to a senior guy, that they would actually go the opposite way and play the younger guy, which is a good mechanism to have, because it showed on a consistent basis to be one that's worked for the club. So players like James Ward-Prowse, who were only 17, were getting a few minutes and getting in the shop window and playing well. So at that point, I was then looking to just get some game time going into the end of the season, and I ended up going out on loan to Millwall due to the fact that they had an FA Cup semi-final coming up at Wembley, and everyone loves Wembley. So I was like, I'll have a little bit of that. I'm sat here in the bench and whatnot. So it'd be good to go and get, maybe like I did previously in my career when I came down and played 11 games for Southampton. It was an opportunity to do that, but with a day out at Wembley. So I opted to do that rather than stay around and not contribute and get any minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, are you kind of feeling like the Premier League seems to be this? It's almost this thing where you've kind of had a little bit of experience from it, a little bit with West Brom, a little bit with Southampton, but never quite established yourself as a regular in the Premier League. I mean, that must have felt quite frustrating when you're seeing your colleagues kind of going on to the next thing. Do you think it's opportunity, or because I always felt like you were good enough for the Premier League from watching you, but obviously never got a chance to see you play that much in the division.
Yeah, I think frustration is a word you can use. Obviously, disappointment, whatever. But it is what it is, and I'm not going to sit here now and say and dwell on that fact that I didn't get as much game time as I would have liked in the Premier League, because whatever way you look at it, I think I have had a pretty amazing career, and one that many people would be happy to have as well. So I'm not going to start looking and trying to pick little bits of negatives out, because I don't think there's any need to. But I firmly believe that if I'd been given the opportunities as I was in previous seasons, that I would have performed like I had done in previous seasons. I felt I was consistently performing to a high level in the Championship and in the League One team, and as we've seen, it's more of the overall dynamics of the team that are important, and I don't feel that having me in there wouldn't have really changed anything in respect to what we'd had previously. So I feel that we would have been just as strong, but it is what it is, and still extremely looking back on things with fond memories, regardless of the lack of game time in the Premier League.
So now, these days, you're out plying your trade in California for Orange County Soccer Club. I was about to say FC, but it's SC, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder, how can you tell us a little bit? We all know that you ended up going to Millwall, but how did you end up going from Millwall to being in the United States of America? And what made that feel like the next step in your career, or the right step in your career at the time?
A number of things, really. Obviously, leaving Saints, I opted to join Millwall, where I'd been on loan the season before. That proved probably to not be a fantastic footballing decision for my career. Never really got going there. There was some personal things going on off the pitch that I was dealing with as well. So whether that affected my performance or not, I'm not too sure. But for whatever reasons, the club was struggling, always in a dogfight and grinding results out, and we never got any momentum or confidence going. We narrowly escaped relegation the first season. Lomas got sacked, who was the manager that signed me after 10 games, and Ian Holloway came in, and again a manager that me and him just didn't click, so to speak. And after leaving Millwall and having a brief spell at Ipswich on loan, which again was great and reminded me of my times at Southampton, where they had the camaraderie, the club, the team spirit, things that we didn't necessarily have at Millwall. It was nice to be involved in again, and I ultimately left there and signed for Doncaster for 12 months, hoping that we would go back to the Championship, and we got relegated. So it just seemed that since I left Southampton, I was always searching for something else, and never really found it. It's a big shoe to fill, big pair of shoes to fill. Having so many successful and amazing relationships in Southampton, to try and find that again, I found like I was always searching for that and never really greeted with it, and growing increasingly frustrated with the mentality of lower league footballers, so to speak. Not that I want to bitch too much about the mentality, but feel that once you're in that environment, which totally wasn't the case at Southampton in League One, that there was I was encountered with players that were had very, very high opinions of themselves and had done very, very little to warrant such opinion. So I found that I was outnumbered with that character, so to speak, and personality, and I just wasn't enjoying being in that environment. So I decided to look abroad, and we have family over here in the States on the West Coast, just outside LA in Redondo Beach. And every off season we would come over here and spend 3 to 4 weeks with them, and just have a downtime and a holiday, but you're living in someone's house, and it's more like just living in the States for a month. And we loved it every time we came. We couldn't wait to get back out here. So I explored the options, and it wasn't really something I would entertain, because I have no problems in telling you that the salary is significantly different from what I've been used to in the past. But I really didn't see. I just didn't see it as a problem. I was like, money doesn't make the world go round or make me happy. So I felt that the move to the States would bring us something new in our lives as a family. Would be a great opportunity for myself to progress on after and potentially coach over here. Would give my kids a fantastic opportunity of a lifestyle that is active and healthy with the climate that we spoke about a while back now at the start. And it was just something that excited me, more so for the future, respect to what it could bring, because I was obviously sacrificing some good years still in England, both financially and at a decent standard. I feel like I still had enough in the tank to perform in the English leagues, but it was, the project over here was exciting and brought a lot of opportunity with it. So I said, where do I sign? And we packed our bags and off we came.
And you're talking about the kind of future there. I know that you studied and got a degree at Manchester Met Uni whilst you were kind of going through your career as well, and you've done training badges as well. I mean, do you see yourself maybe as going on to being a coach in America, or getting involved in that side of things, or club management? Or
so my view on it is basically that I actually I'm 2 years into my degree at Manchester Met, and I had to put it on hold when I came out here because I wasn't sure of what my day-to-day schedule would be, and whether I'd have the time to dedicate 15 hours a week to an online degree course, so which is a 4.5 year course. So I'm halfway through it. So that's sat there waiting to be completed, and I hope to update that and do that at some point. But my view on being over here in the States is this environment over here. I say soccer with a puzzled look on my face. It seems strange calling it that, but the soccer environment over here is one that is growing rapidly, and it's obviously the size of the country means it isn't possible to have 92 professional teams on a little island, so they actually have maybe no more than 1 to 2 professional teams per state, and if we take California for example, California state is the same size as England, and they have 50 odd of these, so it's significantly different. And the way it drives private clubs, maybe your academies at your professional teams. So there's a lot of private clubs around here. There's a couple of professional clubs. There's added, and on top of that, college, high school and university soccer, which again have full-time coaches. So I just feel there's so many different routes and options and directions I can go over here in respect to coaching, which I wouldn't have in England. So yes, I want to look and hopefully become a coach one day at a professional level. And I just felt that this place could offer me that, because England is a little bit more not what you know, but who you know. You see the manager merry-go-round that seems to happen time and time again every single season. Yeah. And you'll see one manager get sacked. So let's take Nigel, for example. He got sacked from Southampton. He goes to Reading. He takes his whole backroom staff with him. So anyone that was there for at Reading previously, regardless of the manager going, they all went, all 4 or 5 of them. So Nigel goes to there. He takes the backroom staff. Then Nigel goes from Reading and he goes to South Sheffield United. He takes his backroom staff. And that's happening the whole way around the country. So how do you break into that? How do you get your foot in the door, so to speak? Where do you start? How do you get the opportunity? It's incredibly difficult. Whereas over here, much more opportunity. My CV speaks for itself in that respect. And as long as I become a good coach, which I have every confidence I will be doing, and will be, so to speak, by putting the time and effort and hard work in to train myself up, I feel that I won't have any problems fulfilling that dream of mine over here, where I might be hitting a few brick walls in England.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully it'll work out, and who knows, if you have a lot of success in the United States, maybe we'd. Well, I don't know whether you'd actually ever want to trade in the sunny climes of California to end up back to this kind of miserable, cold, wet outlook that I'm looking onto at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I'd always trade it for the south of England. If I ever come back, I'll be, I'd probably live in the south. It's
is it more likely to be Southampton than Accrington? Is that what you're saying?
I think it would be. We loved the area, and like I said, we had so many successful, amazing memories that it is without doubt probably in the top 3 of the list of where we would look to live if we ever do come back to the UK.
Richard, I mean, you're very welcome to stop me with this, but there was a very interesting article on the BBC website, I think last week, about you, and you touched earlier on your personal issues that you were saying that kind of affected your performance at Mill. I don't know, would you be comfortable talking about what happened?
Yeah, absolutely, not a problem. Yeah, definitely. So I was basically I came back from Millwall, and I was injured with my ankle at the time. We were expecting our 3rd child, Teddy, and Emily was up one night, and she was, as parents do and mothers of a caring child, always prodding and poking around her tummy, so to speak, and she was worried that she hadn't felt Teddy move for a while. So we went to bed that night, and the next morning she was in the hot bath trying to obviously wake him up, get him going and whatnot. And again, didn't get any feedback on that front. So I left her to it, and I went off to training, and Emily headed over to the hospital just to get a routine ultrasound checkup, and obviously it confirmed obviously our worst nightmare, so to speak. So off the back of that, we obviously unfortunately lost Teddy. Emily had an internal bleed on her placenta, which ruptured or did something along those lines, and ultimately stopped supplying oxygen to Teddy, and he stopped breathing on the fact that the oxygen supply was cut. So an extremely freak, one in a million sort of scenario, which is unfortunate without doubt. And obviously we're still carrying him around with us every day in our thoughts. But it was just difficult at the time to try and care for and make sure that Emily was fine, as well as trying to be somewhere else in respect to me being at the football club every morning. Emily, who is a full-time mother, didn't have that release, so to speak, and was just in the house on her own every day. So the worry and everything that comes with that, the feelings, the emotions, is naturally, we're human beings at the end of the day, and it can really knock you for six. So I quickly realised that I needed to speak to someone or try and figure out a way out of how I was feeling, and I urged Emily to do the same. But ultimately, the route that we took as a couple was, I can't force Emily to do anything, and she felt that she just wanted to shut down and not really speak to anyone about it, which added pressure to myself, because I then felt that it was my duty to help her through it, so to speak, which with it comes added weight, added pressure, and it, like I said, I don't know whether it affected my performances or whether it just coincided with me not being in the team, but I quickly found that by speaking to people, looking for routes and understanding certain scenarios and how to deal with grief and loss and everything that goes with it, mechanisms that you can do, I quickly found that I had a purpose again, and started coming out of my slumber, so to speak. But Emily was always of the impression that she didn't want to speak to anyone about it, because she didn't feel that anyone would know what she was going through. And I'm sure there's hundreds of other parents out there that have been through this and know that it's a very difficult time, and can relate to what Emily was feeling at the time. But they say time's a healer, and for Emily, it definitely was. She slowly started coming to terms with. And at the end of the day, we're very, very lucky to have two beautiful boys already. But it was a time where it hit hard. It hit home hard, and what I always speak to people about now, if I ever get asked the question, is that we managed to now take that thing that happened and turn it into not a positive, but definitely impact us as positively as we can let it impact us by. We've learned incredibly important life lessons, I feel, in respect to how we handle ourselves in certain situations, what's not. I obviously spoke earlier about a financial aspect and the salaries, and I firmly believe that if we hadn't have suffered that loss and realised really what life's about and what's important and what isn't, that I probably wouldn't have signed a contract over here for a significantly lower salary, because you have a mind that you need to earn as much money as possible to be happy and whatnot. And I can safely say that that is definitely not the case. So just happy that we managed to come out and now be in a much stronger position to live out the rest of our lives and hopefully be strong and loving parents to our two little boys that are now, reaping the rewards over here in California, and that opportunity has come to us as a family and obviously the kids, due to the fact that we were unfortunately put through a scenario such as losing Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, it's thank you very much for kind of sharing that story, and I think it is really admirable that you guys managed to pick yourselves up after that. I mean, I've got a little boy myself. My wife is pregnant at the moment, and you describing how you feel for the kicks and you're excited, and then as soon as you don't feel anything or think you don't feel anything, you think, oh, I'm just being paranoid or being silly. But there is that something so deep within us as human beings, which I think you don't really understand until you're a parent. But yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, because I think there's probably a lot of people listening who maybe have had something similar as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was initially, when it happened, chose not to go down the social media route or the the public route of letting the world know that we'd suffered such a loss. I felt, and my personality is that we kept things close, and our loved ones, our family, our friends, obviously everyone was amazing and supported us, but I chose to just hunker down sort of thing and get through it as a close-knit family. But it was ultimately that experience that made me ask the club if I could leave, because we felt that we could no longer stay around Southampton with all the memories that we'd had of shopping for baby gifts and setting up nursery, etc., etc. We felt it would just be too hard to be constantly reminded of that, which is ultimately why I asked to leave the club. And obviously not many people probably know that, but whether I was on my way out or where I wasn't, it was definitely accelerated because of that experience. But I now feel, and sometimes we forget, like you said, we're human beings and parents, and I sometimes forget that I am maybe looked up to by certain aspects of the population as a football player, but you don't really look at yourself like that. I don't look at myself in the mirror and think, people look up to me. So maybe to be able to share my story and hopefully be a sign of strength or inspiration to people, it's extremely humbling on that respect.
Yeah. So we'll kind of take that as we'll move away from this topic now and go on to the humans. Out of the Saints players that you played with, which one's the best human? Who are the ones that you like to speak to or chat with, or are you still in touch with any of them?
Yeah, like I said earlier, such a close knit group, both the wives and the players. So my best friend and somebody I was extremely close with at the club was Adam Lallana. We used to get changed next to each other in the changing rooms. He was my roommate at away trips, or as the lads call it, roomies. And I suppose I was always a little bit in front of Adam in respect to obviously where I was in my life. So I had the kids. I played at a higher level than him at that point, and we just clicked and got on really well. And we used to then go away on holidays to each other in the off season. We'd go away with Portugal with the girls, and then obviously Adam himself had kids and would then ask me for advice and whatnot. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask for the advice at that point, but it was just we had a fantastic relationship, and I still speak to Adam on a maybe not a daily basis, but we touch base more often than not every week through the delights of WhatsApp and whatnot, and which makes things really easy when you're on a different time zone of 8 hours. But no, in respect to families, my wife and myself are still really close with Kelvin and his wife, Dan Harding and his wife, Danny Butterfield and his wife, Lee Holmes and his wife, Fraser Richardson and his partner. So there's still a strong group, and we try and meet up and get together if we can, or go away on holidays with each other and the kids. We all have kids, the lot of people I just mentioned there.
Yeah.
And the wives of the players I mentioned have their own group, and they stay in touch and they're very close. And it's I think guys being guys don't connect as well as girls and women do. So it's always the women now that organise the things, and we just get dragged along. So,
I mean, it is frightening when you have a peek inside a girls' WhatsApp group, isn't it? I mean,
it's incredible.
The volume is just insane of the amount of messages.
Yeah, I mean, guys can ring each other up and they can have a 30-second conversation, cover everything they need to cover, and we're done. Obviously, the girls get together on the phone and they go at it for 30, 40 minutes, and then they get off the phone and they're like, oh, I forgot to ask her. So there you go. It's like I said, they're now the ring bearers, so to speak. They carry the torch and the flame, and if we are getting together on holidays and long weekends, or getting together for a few beers or whatever, it's always the girls that have arranged it, and more often than not it's Dan Harding's missus that does the arranging. She I don't think she has anything else going on in a day-to-day life,
from organising your social life.
Other than to try and cost me more money and get us on trips across the world. So no, delighted that we met them people. It was definitely a life-changing experience down there, and we've made some friends that we'll hopefully never stay out of touch with.
Okay, one last question before I let you go, because I realise I've kept on for longer than probably Dan Harding's wife here. Music. So we've got this theory that Southampton are playing this song, which is like a weird version of I Did It My Way before the games. And we're wondering, does the music affect the players when they come out to the pitch? We're thinking of starting a campaign from the Saints podcast, to get the club DJ to play something a bit more upbeat and a bit more exciting when the players come on.
In the modern day changing room, you always have your own individual DJ, and the music will be going full blast. You'll have guys walking around with their earphones in and listening to their own individual motivational talks, videos, whatever inspires them, or music. But for me, I was always one that walked around the changing room with no earphones in, giving very little. Paying very little attention to what was going on in and on the speakers. I suppose maybe it's I am, but once I get into the tunnel and I'm preparing myself for a game, you hear the music come on, and it's the cue really that I'm about to walk out on the pitch and go to war, so to speak. So you always have an affiliation connection with what's being played over the tannoy, because ultimately it's that cue to get going. Right, here we are. We're about to get going. So I can say that I don't really have what's the best way to put it? I don't really care what is on, as long as it's the same thing every week, because it's the same audio cue, so that I know exactly where I'm at in my routine. So although it might not be to the delight of the fans, I don't think it'll be affecting the players too much, so you don't have to worry on that front. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Richard. You've spoken to me for much longer than I asked you for, and I think this is, about the 5th different calling mechanism that we've tried to get this working.
Yeah, we've tried a few.
Thank you so much for your patience with that. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, and I'm sure our listeners are going to absolutely love listening back to this. So thanks a lot.
I hope so. I hope they enjoy it.
All right. Cheers, Richard.
John, thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.